Good afternoon. This is Nicholas from Gadora Gaming, and I bring you guys my top 10 sleeper decks that people are just not thinking about coming into 2023 post the ban list, post Photon Hypernova, and going into the rest of this year. Not gonna lie, there's a lot of archetypes that are just getting either more support announced, are just better due to the ban list because cards came off for them, or just straight up now have contention to play now that the Seiju and Tier Element cards are out of the meta. So I'm super happy to go into this. I'm super excited for these archetypes. I think we're about to have a very diverse format. Everyone's very scared of Kashtira locking everyone's zones. And don't get me wrong, I think besides Kashtira and maybe Splight, I feel like this format is going to be very diverse and on a very even playing field. I think Brandon might be another one of those three archetypes that everyone's like thinking about when they think top archetypes that are coming out of this ban list. Because Splight's still very playable with the Boojin link. And not to mention there's like 5 different ways to play Sprite. Tier even has a chance to still be relevant because everyone doesn't want to let that deck die already. And of course, Brandon just got a whole bunch of support, so that deck's crazy right now. And Kashtira, same thing. So I kind of just want to go over the 5 or 10 in this case decks that just people are just not going to end up playing, or a few people will, and I think they can definitely show up in your locals or your meta and the next regionals and be like, hey, I'm here to play. I'm getting some new cards, and if I'm not ready this format, I'll definitely be ready next format. So let's just go straight into this. So first things first, I want to go over ABCs. Now, ABCs is the first deck I thought of when the ban list dropped. So many things are going right for ABC. This is its time to shine. Now, ABC's had a couple of times to be meta, and it has been meta for a very long time in 2018 and 2017, but they really did fell off. The only chance they had was when Union Carrier was still a thing, and then every other deck like Drytron abused the shit out of it, so the deck fell off the slander. But so many cards came off this list that ABC, I feel like, can top again. Like, no joke, not only did they get the new Furion cards, which are great with ABCs because we're rank 4 spared, meaning we can make Merrymaker really, really easy, but none of the Water Enchantress cards, the whole Brave Engine, did not get touched whatsoever. Photon Hypernova, we gained the new Galaxy card, meaning we can now search Galaxy Soldier, allowing us access to Infinity plays. Not to mention, we also have Ptolemaios, which also came off the last ban list, so allowed us to access Infinity as well. But we also got access to Ancient Fairy Tale Dragon and Destrudo. These two cards are mainstays in old ABC. They're must-haves. And the fact that they're back in the meta, and the fact that we have 3 Destrudo again, and we have Ancient Fairy Tale Dragon, that's amazing. Giving us 2 normal summons is incredibly great for this archetype as a whole. Not to mention, with tier elements dying on the massacre list and the meta shifting towards Kashtira and Sprite, let's be honest here, the Bystials kind of suck this format. Like, even though we got a new Bystial and you think every deck that's laying dark would be crying right now, let's think about it. How many of these decks are actually going to be playing these cards? Like, if you're going against Kashtira, would you rather have a Bystial in hand, or would you rather have Book of Eclipse, or one of the Kaiju? I mean, I'm telling you, the format's how it's going. If it continues, if Kashtira is really the main big top dog, well, and Sprite is the main big top dog, honestly, I think this deck can actually be a serious contender. I think the Bystials will start subsiding, and this deck can actually take some wins. The boards ABC can make are insanely good. Now, don't get me wrong, it does lose to the Bystials, but again, if the Bystials fall out, which it looks like they're going to, and all the new cards they've gotten and will keep getting, I think ABC has a great chance of being meta again. Maybe not the best deck, but definitely a solid Rogue 2 deck. Now, talking about Rogue 2 decks, we gotta talk about Dinosaurs. Now, Dinosaurs is an amazing archetype that has pissed me off over the years. Ever since I got into Yu-Gi-Oh!, my friend Caesar's been kicking my ass with this deck. No joke. I think ever since like the 10th grade. And what else is there to say? Dinosaurs go ooga booga. They just beat the shit out of you. And Ultimate Trainer Conductor is still an amazing card. This card has not been power crept, honestly. Like, yes, dinosaurs as a whole are not the greatest archetype when it comes to, like, previous meta. But the previous meta had to do with shuffling back cards from the extra deck. And Conductor wasn't great against cards that, when sent to graveyard, trigger. Not to mention, Book of Mooning Fusions isn't the greatest, especially when you can fuse someone with face-down monsters. But going into the next format with Kashtira and XYZ deck, I feel like Conductor going second to break boards can definitely do some overhaul damage. Not to mention, I don't think it's this set, but the set afterwards, we're getting the new dinosaur monsters. Like we've already read the effects. These cards are insane for dinosaurs. At first, I didn't think they were that great, but watching some replays that people have been playtesting this stuff online, these cards are phenomenal. The fact that it's pop babies, we just got that new dinosaur, that new True King off the list. I think dinosaurs are in a great position to take over next format. Now, don't get me wrong, the dinosaurs still lose to the Bystials. They are not great against the Shufflers. They still have some issues to be resolved, but I just feel like with all the new support they're getting, and that Konami's kind of just saying, hey, dinosaurs are going to be good next set, be ready. And that's just my opinion. I agree with them. Alright, so let's talk about Cyberse as a whole. So, I feel like Mathmex and Agnes is the way we need to talk about when it comes to the archetype that is known as Cyberse, or the typing mechanic as a whole. Because these cards are insane, and they only get better with the Fall of Bystials going into a new format. Now, the Mathmech engine was always the third best deck for the longest time, for like a couple months. Until the Bystials came out in Darkwing Blast, the deck fell off to existence. But this deck, if we're going into a format where Splite's the best deck, well, guess what? Mathmech has a huge win against Sprite. Mathmech's amazingly good at setting up a board that Sprite has difficulty dealing with. So that's already a plus there. Not to mention, this is weaker Sprite. Mathmech has not lost any support. If anything, they're only getting better next set with the new Cyberse cards. Same thing with Agnister. Both these archetypes are just really, really solid at making really annoying and difficult boards that are very unconventional. Like, for example, Agnisters, they just make a big-ass towers, and you have to deal with that. If you don't have Goddess, you lose. This thing's going to be 6,000 attack. You just lose. But I think of Mathmech. Mathmech can make this really gummy board where they either go Kotak or Control, and they just pay Heat Soul, or they like make this board where they like rip 3 cards on the field. It's a really powerful deck. And the reason why it was bad, Bystials plus Tier Elements being the best deck, which is this deck's worst matchup, meant this deck had lost its ability to compete. But now that those are leaving the format, well, I can't say Bystials are leaving the format because we don't know yet. But like I said, this is thinking if Sprite and Kashtira are going to be the best decks, I think Mathmech's a pretty solid spot. Now, don't get me wrong, people are still going to be playing the Bystials. They're going to side deck the shit out of them. But I feel like going into game 1, and you can definitely win some games with Mathmech now. Especially once that new Cyberse comes out, and the Cynet Overflow, whatever that set's called. Mathmech and all Cyberse archetypes are going to be crazy. So, do not sleep on these cards. Alright, so now it's time to talk about one of my favorite new archetypes that came out last year, Punks. Punks are amazing this new format, especially with the new Gold Pride cards. This deck with the new Gold Pride cards just right now can hit on multiple layered disruptions that are ridiculous. We're getting on like quadruple bounce, multiple pops and negates, and we have full like 3 or 4 cards in hand with hand traps. Like, it's ridiculous how crazy this deck can pop off. Now, don't get me wrong. The reason why Punks fell off is the ceiling of every other archetype just went off to the moon. Like, Punks never even got a hit. And they were like the best deck in like May with the Furion cards. They just fell off because Sprite and Tier were just the best decks, and they just kept getting better and better to the point that Punks could not keep up with them. Not to mention with Chaos Ruler being banned, they never really had a chance to come back in the meta. But now with these new wave cards, Gold Pride is basically the 4th wave of Punk cards. No joke, The gold pride cards right now by themselves are like 4 or 5 disruptions as extenders. It's ridiculous. Like, if I didn't know any better, I would say that gold pride is punk cards, and they are at this point. I consider them honorary punk cards because they do so much for the strategy. It's ridiculous, and especially with the new sets coming out, this archetype is only going to get better. The new Jet Synchron, Stardust guy, that's going to make this even a quick synchro on opponent's turn even easier. We still have to experiment with Ancient Fairy Tale Dragon and all those cards. So we have some field spell manipulation we can start doing. Not to mention, we are also having the second wave of Gold Pride cards. This is just the first wave. TCG exclusive cards always get a second to third wave. So who knows what else the second wave is going to do for this archetype. Make it more consistent, to make it even stronger. We still have like 8 more cards coming up for this deck. So I'm just excited to see where this deck goes. It's only going to get better from here. And I'm super excited. Alright, so now it's time to go over one of the most complicated decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Insects. Insects are a very variety of decks. So there's a very mish and a lot of conversation in the community of insect players on how to play this deck, since there's so many different variations of the same deck. There's the more Bee Trooper variant of the deck. There's the Insector variant of the deck. There's a more Ballpark version of the deck. There's now a new Fusion version of the deck. There's so many ways to play insects. It's insane. There's the new Soma Crawler version of the deck. Shit, there's even Sprite versions of this deck. There are so many ways to play insects. It's insane. And not to mention, they're just getting more support next set. And they just got a whole bunch of support this set with Photon Hypernova. I think there's going to be some really skilled bug players coming to your locals. And when they do, I don't think it's going to be a good time for you. I think these decks are going to steamroll some of the decks. When a competitive combo heavy deck comes in and you don't know what any of the cards do or how to disrupt the deck, it's going to take games. No joke. Like, honestly, Bee Troopers are going to have their rise now. I think the fact that they are a TCG exclusive and that Japan is finally now getting these cards is such a big deal, because it means the insect support that we could have gotten years earlier is coming now, which is going to give this deck a huge boom to have a chance in the meta, especially with tier elements taking its loss. I honestly do think that we have a chance for, honestly, greatness for this archetype. Now, don't get me wrong, we still don't have a win condition. We still don't have that big boss monster, but we do have some really cool cards that just blow up the field. So honestly, this deck feels like Earth Machine right now in Infinite Track, where it takes a lot of really powerful skilled pilots with a lot of combo-based boards that can end on a variety of different ways to play the deck. And once it's cracked, once the code's cracked and everyone figures out the best way to play these cards, I feel like this deck has potential to take a YCS. No joke. These cards are insane, and they're only going to get better. Alright, so now it's time to talk about everyone's forgotten summoning mechanic, Ritual. Ritual is one of those mechanics that gets revolutionized every time they put a new archetype. They've done so many things for rituals, from using a field spell to use rituals, from using equipped spells to use rituals, to rituals that just say screw all extra deck monsters. And now we're getting a new ritual archetype, which we have no idea what it's about. But if it's as any as good as all of these new dinosaur cards are getting, then I'm actually really excited for this new archetype. So if you don't know, when the new dinosaur cards were revealed, there's 2 other archetypes also shown. One of them was this ritual deck right here. We have no idea what it does. We just know it's a ritual fiend archetype, and it kind of looks like a weird mashup of like generals. I'm not even sure what's going on here in the artwork. He looks like a pope, but he also has stars like a general. And he's an alien or a gremlin. I'm not really sure what's going on. But I'm really excited to see where this archetype goes. Not to mention, Mikanko is going to get another wave of support. The new Dogmatico support is already insane. I can't wait for decks to experiment with that. And the new Libromancers are getting support. And since all ritual decks kind of work together cohesively, I can't wait to see what some people are going to come up with, especially with all these new archetypes in rotation. I think rituals are a good spot going into this new meta. especially with the fall tier element. Honestly, a lot of archetypes you can say to be put on this list get so much better just because the ceiling of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is finally falling down a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, the decks that are going to replace tier elements are going to be a different kind of wombo combo deck, but I don't think we're going to get anything as complicated or as annoying as tier elements. The fact that they could just mill like 20 of their cards, the fact they had like chain link 10s, the fact that they had like multiple shuffles and multiple different kinds of interaction, besides making a nasty board, they had graveyard shufflers, they had back row you had to deal with, they had a powerful end board. Thank God it's over, and I honestly do think Rituals have a good spot. Now you just need their support cards to come out and a good archetype to make them. Alright, so I feel it would be remiss if I don't talk about Scareclaw. Scareclaw is a house of an archetype. The stuff they get in Photon Hypernova is insane. Not only do they get two really, really powerful support cards that make the deck even stronger, but the fact that this deck can be splashable with Kashtira is insane to me. Not to mention, this deck is kind of a house when you think about it. Not only does this card just make it like immune to all monsters on the field, it's generic as hell to make. It is big. It is a gigantic link monster that can just protect itself in so many ways. We have a trap card that we can banish as a quick effect to negate all link monsters your opponent controls until the end of the turn. So this card has a link effect, has a link floodgate per quick effect against your opponent. The only archetype on the field that can deal with this guy, because synchros, XYZs, fusions, all those guys will be put in defense mode. If you can somehow try to clear this dude, not only does he have one protection, as he's unaffected by those card effects, but he also has two other levels of protection. He has the he has the Monster Reborn, which can banish itself from grave in order to protect him once per turn, and he also has the new continuous spell that just makes him unaffected. Basically, he can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects now, which is kind of insane. This guy is so hard to remove, it's ridiculous. If you let Scareclaw have a turn, they're going to murder you. They can play first or second. The combo is very linear. And now they have a new extension in the archetype that says, okay, you stop my normal summon? Cool. Banish what you hit, special summon, do the entire play anyway. Not to mention, they have Link into the Reigns, which allows you to quick link anyway. And this deck is a beast. Be afraid of Scareclaw. Alright, so now it's time to talk about Pendulum. Pendulum, best deck. Pendulum, greatness. Pendulum, amazingness over here. Valiant's top the regional. Draco Slayer's untouched on a ban list. Cards keep coming off the ban list with Servant of Endymion now at 3. Let's go Pendulums. This is the time for us to come in and win a YCS. Why not? When was the last time that's been happening? But no, to be honest, these archetypes are pretty solid and going into the next meta. Don't get me wrong, with Kashtira kind of blocking pendulum scales, you're definitely going to be losing game 2. But if your opponent doesn't know what you're doing, they're blocking your main monster zones, you can definitely clean house with Pendulum. Not to mention the fact that we still have an FTK going around with the Valiants, and we have Servant back at 3. This archetype has a real chance of doing greatness. Pendulums have become what plants and insects are in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they're just like one more support away from being the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! No joke. Like every time, we're just like, this archetype is fantastic. Rika's gonna make plants meta. Finally, the pendulums have become that. Let's face it here. Pendulums are just a hodgepodge of like different archetypes that shuffle together and are just crazy. The Abyss Actor support's pretty solid, even though they're locked into Abyss Actors. The Valiants are crazy as hell. Draco Slayers is a really cool, powerful archetype. And Servant makes all the counter decks cool again. Let's see what this deck can do. This is probably, out of all the archetypes we've discussed, probably the least likely to do anything coming up this new format. But it's not a bad archetype, and it was still holding its own in tier 0 tier element. So the fact it can still do that and still be like a rogue deck is pretty solid in general. And I'm really excited to see where this archetype goes. Konami's not going to stop printing Pendulum support. We already see that. We're just going to keep getting more and more cards until this deck becomes a problem. So let's go on to our final card. Alright, so for number 10, I kind of am cheating here. Not going to lie. I felt like there's 3 archetypes I wanted to put on the list. 3 more at least, and these are it. We have Rika's, we have Tri-Brigade, and we have Danger Dark Worlds. So all 3 of these archetypes, I felt like they could have been honorable mentions, but honestly, I kind of just want to put them all on here. Rika, as you know, plant archetype. Plants too strong, one more wave of support, they're broken just like bugs, just like pendulums, and nothing no different. We got a whole bunch of new plant cards / insect cards and Photon Hypernova. So plants are getting stronger. Who knows what the new synchro cards can do for plants. So we'll just have to see. As for Tri-Brigade got their new Link 5, so it's good target to send. Not to mention, the new Scareclaw cards can work with Tri-Brigade, and looks like Splat's going to be depending on a new engine to make its deck still relevant. So it's either going to be pure with the Tri-Brigades, or with Gishki, or Runic. So who knows? So that's what they call Tri-Brigade's role in the whole new meta. Not to mention, Tri-Brigade by itself with another engine has always been solid. So don't sleep on Tri-Brigade. And finally, Danger Dark Worlds. This deck is cool. If the Bestials are falling out in the meta, this deck has a chance to hand loop your opponent to death. Not to mention, it ends on some pretty solid boards. Now, don't get me wrong, the deck bricks, and the Bestials still eat this deck alive. So if the Bestials are in any shape or form the next format, this deck isn't going to make it. That's why I consider to put all 3 of these archetypes in a very small category, because I don't think the plant / insect stuff is enough to break over or overflow the water potential when it comes to plants. I don't think Tri-Brigade is the best deck out of any of the decks we talked about, so that's why it's also here. And Dark Worlds are Dark Worlds. I think they're cool. So I feel like all 3 of these archetypes have a chance. All of these archetypes have a chance. And that's just my opinion. I might have went over to 10, but screw it. It's my list. Let me do my thing. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy. Take care. Don't do anything stupid. If you have any other archetypes you feel like that with Tier Element's death are going to come out, let me know. Do you think Tier Elements are actually dead after this hit? I honestly don't think so. I think someone's going to come up with some bullshit Tier Element list, and it's going to be still in the meta. So we'll just have to see. I just hope that with Tier Elements fall from grace, it doesn't become a 2 archetype format with just Sprite and Kashtira. I hope there's some diversity opening up now in the archetypes. And I hope that at least 4 or 5 of these archetypes that I've gone over today can take a spot as one of the best decks in the format. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy. See you all in the next one. I didn't mention Labyrinth and any other archetype like Branded that we already know are going to be the best decks going forward. So that's why I left them off. Take care. See you all in the next one.